No cheating. If you can tell me which running back led the Bills in receiving yards last year in the comments, I will give you a cookie. But this is part of the statistical analysis that led us to these conclusions about these running backs. And if you didn't cheat and you actually got it right, you should have paused the video and did it. I will tell you now. Nathan, have you thought about who it is yet? Do you know who it is? Which running back?
I can't remember the third guy. I can't. So you just got to tell me the name.
I'm not going to tell you. Okay. No, I'll tell you. The lead receiving back for the Buffalo Bills last year was Ty Johnson, 284 yards. The third guy. Yeah. More than James Cook's 258. And so what am I getting at here? I was looking at the receiving yardage of the Bills running backs because I was looking at just how sustainable is the production of running backs around the league. And the reason that James Cook makes the list of guys that are, in our opinion, statistically guaranteed almost to go down in production this year is because James Cook got the majority of his points. Well, not the majority. I would say almost the majority, though, which is really impressive. Let's look at touchdown dependency here because James Cook obviously had a ton of touchdowns last year, right? 16 rushing touchdowns and 2 receiving touchdowns. So 18 total touchdowns on 266 points. I'll let you do the math. In 6-point rushing touchdown leagues, that's a 40% touchdown dependency rate. Let me tell you, that is sky high. We don't want touchdown dependency rates to be over like 30%, and he is 10% above like the threshold we're looking at here. He scored a ton of touchdowns last year, which is great, and obviously not to be, unexpected because in 2024 the Bills had the 3rd ranked rushing offense in the entire NFL. And then the 8th overall offense. And so part of you are going to say, yeah, well, just draft players in good offenses, and this is what happens. You are somewhat correct. But touchdowns are the most volatile statistic in fantasy production. And so when we're looking at 18 touchdowns for a running back like James Cook, is on the high end. It really is on the high end. So naturally, James Cook is a pretty obvious regression candidate. And again, when we're looking at touchdown dependency rates for guys across the league, just for an example, I'll give you a benchmark. Like Bijan Robinson, one of the best running backs in the NFL. 26% touchdown rate in terms of the percentage of touchdown points over total points in fantasy football, so 26%. But even guys going around James Cook here, Alvin Kamara was at 18%. Alvin Kamara, that's why he has the highest floor of anybody in this range, is because he does not need touchdowns to score at a super high rate. Chuba Hubbard, 27%. Right there, like where Bijan is, he's just scoring less points, right? And so we're looking at all of these guys, Cook, Chuba, Kamara, and let's add in James Conner, because James Conner is being drafted close here as well. And when you're comparing all 4 of these guys across the entire season, there are 2 categories that James Cook wins in. Yards per carry, which is great, obviously. That's great. And then total touchdowns. Chuba leads in snap percentage, rushing attempts, rushing yards, rushing attempts inside the 5. Alvin Kamara, points, where he finished, his targets, receiving yards, and total yards. So obviously very different types of running backs here. And James Conner actually wins in 0 of them. And so we can just take James Conner out of this and just compare these 3 guys. But still, James Cook is going ahead of Chuba Hubbard in pretty much every draft. We've done 2 Real Money Live drafts now on the channel, and I'm pretty sure in your draft, did Cook go before Chuba Hubbard?
Yes.
Yeah, and it did in my draft too. And Chuba's the better pick. Chuba is the better pick. And it's not because, there are plenty of issues with Chuba, and Chuba's risky. But I don't think he's as big of a regression candidate, although Chuba is a regression candidate, in my opinion. I don't think he's as big of a regression candidate as James Cook. I'm not selecting James Cook right now. He's the running back 8 last year in fantasy football. And I still think he's obviously going to be the running back 1 there. But when you're looking at the Bills and their rushing volume, but with Josh Allen being there, it kind of throws a huge wrench through things because it doesn't take much. Josh Allen and Ray Davis combined for more carries than James Cook had. And when you add in Ty Johnson, who had 41, I mean, the rushing opportunities there are really shared. So when you factor in a couple things, the lack of, James Cook is a capable receiving back. They just don't tend to use him like that. So the lack of receiving production compared to some of his teammates, the inability to have a workhorse, bell cow workload in terms of carries, opportunities, and his high touchdown rate. He's a classic regression candidate in fantasy football. It doesn't mean you shouldn't draft him necessarily, but I do think he's going to regress in fantasy football. And, he's probably not going to suck, but, regression candidates are ones that are typically overpriced in fantasy football. I think that's where James Cook is right now.
Yeah, we're actually going to stay kind of in the same price range with this next running back that I think is definitely worth talking about. Kenneth Walker, going in the same price range as James Cook at the moment, and it's honestly, it's a pretty fertile price range for a lot of running backs in like the 3rd and 4th round.
You just said fertile on a video. That's great. Keep going.
Yeah. I probably could have picked a better word than that. But there's a lot of expected production in this value range for a lot of these running backs. I mean, you're looking probably as early as shut up and stop laughing. You got like as early as Omari and Hampton. You're probably not getting Chase Brown much in the mid-third anymore because of the Zach Moss news, which apparently was the reason that now he's going in the second. Like, what do we expect from Zach Moss? But all that to say, Kenneth Walker is the one guy in this range. I just want to compare like everybody else going, even within like a round and a half to 2 rounds before or after him. Kenneth Walker, when he was healthy, 16.5 points per game. When he was healthy. Chuba Hubbard, 16.1 points per game. James Cook, 16.7 points per game. Alvin Kamara, 18.9 points per game. David Montgomery, 15.8 points per game. Breece Hall, 15.1 points per game. And James Conner, 15.9 points per game. I could add Joe Mixon as well, who was right around that production. He had a lot of production last season, but he does have some injury questions heading into the season, so I understand why he'd be going at a discount. Kenneth Walker, of those running backs that I just mentioned, of the 6-7 running backs that I mentioned, is the one guy that is certified, I'm going to say it, injury prone.
Wow.
He cannot stay healthy. He will miss time. He will not be consistent when he's on the field. You can tell me what you project and what you expect from Kenneth Walker. You can tell me every year from now until he ceases to play in the NFL. Look at the last 3 years since he has entered the league, since he has entered the NFL. Cannot stay healthy, cannot stay healthy, cannot stay healthy. Injured. They are always soft tissue issues too. Soft tissue issues. It's always a quad. It's always a groin issue. It's always some sort of bone bruise or whatever the frick. Kenneth Walker will not stay on the field. And again, this is not my only argument for why I think Kenneth Walker. I think it honestly,
it's a pretty good one.
If it were my only argument, it's a good one because guess what? He won't be on the field while everyone else is putting up the same amount of points per game and will be on the field every single game. For the most part. Well, David Montgomery is okay. That's fine. Sure. Like David Montgomery missed time. Sure. That's also why he's going 2 rounds after Kenneth Walker, and he's playing alongside Jahmyr Gibbs. I understand that. Okay. So like, I'm not trying to be irrational here. So let me just take it a little bit further. Zach Charbonnet is a limited skill set running back. He's not nearly as talented as Kenneth Walker because I think neither of us would say that Zach Charbonnet athletically is more talented than Kenneth Walker. In fact, we would even go further and say that Kenneth Walker is one of the more talented running backs in the NFL when he's on the field and when he's playing. But that's always been the biggest issue is like, it's not necessarily about talent, it's about availability. And when you're playing in the middle of the season and you're depending on Kenneth Walker to be out there and score you points and he doesn't play, that costs you a valuable week of production and potentially winning your matchup that week. Those games matter. Those games count. It's not like we just want to look at points per game and say, oh, well, on a points per game basis, this guy's amazing, so you got to draft him because he's going at a discount. The 0-point games matter too. Why do the 0-point games not count on a points per game basis when every week matters in fantasy football? This isn't Dynasty, guys. This is fantasy football. So when you got a 17-week season, you better hope that Kenneth Walker is playing in 99% of those weeks. So like 16 and a half games. So look, with Walker, the other thing that I'm concerned about is because the organization and because that coaching staff knows how difficult it is for Kenneth Walker to stay healthy and on the field, they are going to limit his snap share, which could lower his floor a little bit. Because admittedly, when Kenneth Walker's on the field, his upside is very, very high, and he's going to have some pretty productive weeks. But he already last season demonstrated a pretty low floor, like even in PPR formats. He still had games of like 8 points, 6 points. He had a couple of 13-point games there as well, which was nice. But like he had some single-digit weeks there, and it's because he doesn't get consistent receiving usage. I think that floor is going to be a lot lower this season because of how they expect to utilize Zach Charbonnet on a more consistent basis. Charbonnet, when he was on the field with the opportunity that he was given, by the way, a guy that never really seems to get banged up or injured because he's a little more reliable. But when he was on the field, he was just as productive. I mean, he had 30-point games. He had 25-plus point games. he was getting a ridiculous amount of volume and it was just him. And then you saw that, again, really heavily favor Walker once he was back healthy. That's going to be closer to maybe not a true 50-50 split, but even 40-60, and that does matter when you're talking about floor. So honestly, I mean, when you're looking at fourth-round running backs right now this season, I don't think you could draft a running back with a lower floor than Kenneth Walker. Go get James Cook instead. We just talked about James Cook. I'd rather have James Cook.
Our absolute best deal of the season is live now over on flockfantasy.com/domain. Get our season pass. Get every tool on the site, all of our rankings, 4 draft guides, free start-sit questions, free trade questions, personalized advice from Nathan and I, our algorithm, which has been built out for you, all for $30. Go take advantage. The link is down in the comments. Use code DOMAIN. You can get a big discount on it and get it for that $30. And again, it unlocks everything for 6 months. It's the best deal we've ever had. Go take advantage. Flockfantasy.com/domain. Like I said, use code DOMAIN. If you do, we can get you in a league with Nathan and I. You can draft this on the channel. Links down in the comments if you want to take advantage of that. Go get the season pass. But let's talk about B-Rob. And some of you are going to be like, yeah, well, we know what B-Rob is every year. And I think, yeah, I kind of agree with you on that. It is still worth noting that B-Rob is really not very good. You know, on an offense where, in terms of run plays per game, they're 5th in the NFL. B-Rob is 28th in snap share, 26th in opportunity share in the league. He's 43rd in routes run. He's 41st in route participation. He's not efficient. He's 36th in true yards per carry. He's 35th in yards per touch. He's 40th in juke rate. He's 30th in yards created. He's, I mean, legitimately, like statistically, one of the worst running backs in the entire NFL. Maybe the worst starting running back in the NFL statistically. Yet every year he comes out, and what was he? He's the running back 29 last year in PPR leagues. And so that's not great, but that's about where he's being drafted again this year. And so you might be like, well, why do you want to really do this? Why do you want to, pick on Brian Robinson when he's not going any higher than what we know he's going to be? I think there are better picks in that range, first of all, but I do think Brian Robinson is another guy when you're looking at 8 touchdowns last year, so that's 48 out of 150 points. So you're looking at just at about 30% of his production came from touchdowns as well. So he's a little bit on the higher end there. And, the other thing about the Commanders is they didn't really have anybody last year. And you might say they don't this year as well, and I'd say, yeah, that's probably true. But Jacory Crosby-Merritt sure is getting a lot of hype right now. Mm-hmm. I mean, and he sure is getting a lot of run in camp. And that's not from me. It's from beat reporters. It's from different sources we've heard talk about the situation. And so, with B-Rob, he's 26 years old, obviously. He's never finished higher than running back 21. He's not going to this year as well, and you might just think, well, he's a safe pick. Well, there are better picks. Let's dive into the algorithm here, and let's look at the upside, floor, and risk scores for the guys going around Brian Robinson, okay? Directly above him, obviously Aaron Jones has more risk, but he has a higher floor and higher upside. 2 spots above him in our rankings. DeAndre Swift has 2 points higher at upside, obviously a much lower floor, and about, a little bit less risk, right? But right below him, Tony Pollard. Let's talk about Tony Pollard real quick. We kind of mentioned him here. He has higher upside, he has a higher floor, and he has lower risk. Okay, and they're going pretty much in the exact same spots in draft. Not to mention you've got guys down here like Zach Charbonnet, Cam Scatterbo, Tyjae Spears in that Titans offense as well, Jordan Mason, who you could make an argument if you think they're going to go way up in value or if you think they're going to get increased opportunity this year. Then you could make an argument to take those guys over B-Rob. But I think the Pollard one's particularly interesting. When you're comparing these 2 backs last year over the course of the entire season, I mean, Tony Pollard pretty much won in every category. Pretty much every one. He didn't score as many touchdowns, which is volatile, and didn't have as many rushing attempts inside the 5. And that's it. Pollard won in every other metric. And so B-Rob's I wouldn't say B-Rob's a bad pick. But B-Rob, I mean, statistically guaranteed to suck. Yeah, B-Rob is going to be bad again next year. And so in that range, again, this is why, because you're probably drafting B-Rob as your running back 3. B-Rob is a terrible running back 3. He's not. If your fantasy football team ends up with B-Rob as your running back 3, you are in trouble. And it's why we're preaching to you through the first 4 rounds, you need 2 running backs. And that third one, you need to grab him probably in the next 3 rounds before you get to the B-Rob range. Because if you get to the B-Rob range and you don't have 3 running backs on your team and you're flexing this guy every week, your upside is severely limited. There is not a ton of upside with Brian Robinson. It's just not in his play style. Last year, when you're looking at some of his upside statistics, he had 1 game the entire season where he went over 20 points and he had 20.3 points in week 4. And that was it. His floor is 2 points. 2 points in week 18, 2 points in week 16, 3 points in week 12, 8 points in week 8. And this is on a team, a contending team, a Super Bowl contending team in the Washington Commanders, as weird as that is to say. And the starting running back there has a floor of 2 points. There's not a single statistic that points towards Brian Robinson ever being really fantasy relevant. There are way better picks in that range. I still believe in the offense. But at the same time, Brian Robinson, sometimes there are exceptions to the rule. And the rule typically is draft running backs and good offenses. This running back, it doesn't matter how good the offense he is in is. He's not really all that productive, and he's got a super cap ceiling. And so, Brian Robinson, there are better picks in that range for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, when you're looking at that range, you're essentially looking at third, maybe fourth options at the running back position.
Hopefully
if you
fourth.
have them on your team, hopefully fourth, which means basically, hopefully last resort flex options.
Yeah.
And when you're looking at last resort flex options, you want to go with higher upside guys. And I mean, you were just mentioning Tony Pollard and how you prefer B-Rob how you prefer Tony Pollard over B-Rob. And that's not to say that we prefer Tony Pollard as a pick in fantasy this year either, because when you're looking at the volume that he got last season, you've got to be concerned if that's really going to be sustainable this year with how inefficient he was across the board last season. I mean, with the amount of opportunities that he got last year, you should have expected him to be at least close to a top 12 back. I mean, the guy was 8th in total carries among running backs in the NFL. 8th in carries. If you remember, they had no one else in that offense. Literally no one. Will Levis was awful. The receiving room was awful. And Tony Pollard was getting a ton of volume. And it was like, it was like getting your teeth pulled by the dentist trying to figure out if they're trying to watch Tony Pollard actually produce with the opportunity that he was getting. It was like, just get more than 2 yards every single carry. He was also 9th in targets. It wasn't just his opportunity on the ground. It was his opportunity in the air. And despite all of that, 9th in opportunity share, 9th in snap share, 9th in weighted opportunities, that screams top 12 back. He finished as a running back, low-end running back 2 in total points per game with 12.5 fantasy points per game. And that's in PPR formats, folks. This guy was 42nd in true yards per carry, 42nd in yards per touch, 52nd in juke rate, and 25th in evaded tackles. He has no explosiveness whatsoever, no second gear in the open field. You essentially just have to just hope and cross your fingers that Tony Pollard is going to get touchdowns, and that really is what ended up screwing his season. Is he only got 5 touchdowns last year, and no wonder he ended up getting only got 5 touchdowns last year. Every time they gave him the ball and gave him 5 carries in the red zone, he couldn't punch any of them into the end zone. He couldn't get any more than 2 yards per carry. It was so bad. What I'm worried about this season is you have a bolstered wide receiver room because of what Cam Ward is going to offer in the passing game. It's bolstered just because of what Cam Ward can offer as a quarterback there. That's going to be better than Will Levis. We haven't even seen Cam Ward play, and I would bet the house on it that Cam Ward is going to be better than Will Levis was. Hopefully that's going to open the field for the running backs a little bit more, so you have that one thing going for Tony Pollard. But what I'm concerned about is seeing Tyjae Spears and what he was able to do when he was healthy last season. And again, when he was healthy is a big caveat there. When his snap share went up in weeks 15 through 17, which is very telling, they did that at the end of the season. They started experimenting. They were well out of the picture, and Pollard's snap share went down significantly. Spears' usage went up from like in the 20s and 30s to 56, 61, and 65% snap share against Cincinnati, Indy, and Jacksonville. He had like 4, 10, and 20 carries, and he had 7, 4, and 4 targets, scoring 27, 21, and 13 points in those last 3 games of the season. I'm not betting the farm on Tyjae Spears coming out and exploding this season based on a 3-game sample size at the end of last year, where half those teams that he played weren't even in the playoff picture when it was all said and done. But what I am betting on is Tony Pollard's volume going down because he was just straight up inefficient. It was not worth giving him the ball on a per-touch basis, and that opportunity and that volume will go down. Less could be more from an efficiency perspective for the running back room as a whole in Tennessee, and less will mean less for Tony Pollard last year when he already couldn't make the most out of the ridiculous amount of opportunities he got in 2024.
Let's talk about America's team, the Dallas Cowboys, and Jerry Jones obviously shooting himself in the foot with the Michael Parson negotiation right now. But anyways, they also shoot themselves in the foot every single year at running back. They do it every year. They've had many opportunities. They had one of the better running back classes in the last couple of years this last year, and they got Jaden Blue out of it. Jaden Blue's fine, but he was not the best running back available when they had picks. And so this is about Javonte. This is a Javonte tweet, though. Last year, there was a very nice bright spot for Javonte Williams. He was 5th in the NFL in targets last year among running backs. Shout out R.J. Harvey and J.K. Dobbins, probably R.J. Harvey more than J.K. Dobbins. But you might say, okay, that makes Javonte a really good, there's nobody else there. Well, actually, Javonte is kind of splitting first-team reps with Miles Sanders, who's splitting first-team reps with Jaden Blue. Basically, all of them are going to cannibalize each other's upside for the most part, and what's probably going to end up happening is Jaden Blue is going to be the guy that ends up being the starter there because he has more upside and he's more explosive than both Miles Sanders and Javonte Williams. Javonte Williams, 5th in the NFL in running back targets last year. That's great, right? He was the running back 30 from a production standpoint. I've never seen somebody so high in targets who did not score points at all. And you might be wondering, how does that even add up? It might have been because he was 54th in the NFL in yards per carry. 54th. I didn't even know there were 54 running backs in the NFL. Okay, and so you've got that. Obviously, again, the targets are great, but true yards per carry, bad. Yards per touch, 37th, bad. Yards created, 29th, bad.
I mean, what about the efficiency in the air with those opportunities and those targets?
Where even was it? Yards per out run, 14th in the league. So average. I mean, average efficiency.
Yards per reception, 24th.
But again, I don't think the Cowboys are going to be like, yeah, we brought Javonte in to be our receiving back. At this point in his career, I don't think so. In fact, I think Jaden Blue's probably going to be a better receiving back than Javonte Williams will. But the point of this is, we don't think Javonte, number one, nothing points to him being good statistically. He hasn't finished higher than running back 29 since his rookie year in 2021 when he was the running back 17. He hasn't averaged over 4 yards per carry in the last 2 years. He hasn't scored more than 4 touchdowns in the last 2 years. And he's going to a situation where, yes, there is going to be some opportunity, but it's not like he didn't have opportunity the last 2 years in Denver and he couldn't win the job. And who was he competing with? Guys at about the skill level he's competing with now. Guys about at the skill level of Miles Sanders and Jaden Blue. And so if Javonte didn't win the job there, he's not going to win the job in Dallas. I don't think he's going to be like a super workhorse. And if he is, we know he's inefficient. And even if he gets a ton of targets, I don't think there's going to be enough for him to sustain any sort of high fantasy production this year. Dallas Cowboys, obviously, again, they have kind of a motley crew of running backs there, and that, you could make the argument. But at the same time, when you're looking at last year, the rushing offense for the Dallas Cowboys, 31st in the NFL. I had to scroll down to find it. And obviously the overall offense last year for the Dallas Cowboys was not good either. It wasn't as bad as the rushing offense, but it's 25th in the NFL, and it's going to be better with Dak. But I think Dak really makes the passing offense a lot better. I'm not really sure about the rushing offense. In fact, really since they had the 1-2 punch of Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard, that last year Zeke was good, they haven't really had running back production there. Tony Pollard, everybody thought he was going to ball out the year that he came within. It was 2023, I think, that he, finally got the starting role, and, he actually finished worse than he did in 2022 when he was sharing snaps. And so I don't think this is an offense that's going to produce a super high-octane running back, but if I do, it's definitely not Javonte Williams. Again, a guy whose statistics literally say, do not draft this guy. I don't care about the volume. I don't care about the vacated carries, things like that. I'm not going to touch Javonte Williams, who's in a bad rushing offense. So Javonte, not a guy I'm going to be drafting this year, and his price isn't bad, but I don't want to draft him. I don't want to draft Javonte Williams. I don't think you should either.
Yeah, I don't really want to draft Travis Etienne either, and honestly, I don't want to draft really anyone in that offense or in that running back room this season. Again, if you want to bet on an upside guy, you would probably want to bet on the fresh legs there, but I will say Bigsby right now, according to all the training camp reports, is pretty much established himself as the quote-unquote running back one in what's looking to be ultimately probably a committee, but he's getting a majority of the rushing work. Etienne is getting some of the receiving work, and then Tootin's getting like everything in between. Right now it's looking Bigsby 1, Etienne 2, and then Tootin 3. Look, my thing with Travis Etienne is I think we've just kind of we've gotten sick of how inefficient he is. Not only us, but I think the Jags have gotten sick with how inefficient he is as a true runner, and I don't think he's going to get really much opportunity at all as a rusher. He had 220 carries in 2022, 267 carries in 2023, going down from 5.1 to 3.8 yards per carry. They gave Etienne like 120 less carries in 2024, and he was still less efficient than he was in 2023. Maybe Etienne has just lost a step and he's continuing to lose like a half step every single season as a runner, and he just can't he can't sustain the production that he showcased in 2022. It truly has been terrible. And we were just talking about how inefficient as a true runner Javonte Williams was. Etienne right there, 52nd among running backs in true yards per carry, 3.6 and 45th in yards per touch. He's not explosive. He's 38th in juke rate, and he had less target volume in total last season compared to Javonte Williams. Like, honestly, you would have rather had Javonte Williams last year if you had to flex someone instead of Travis Etienne. It was that bad. It was truly that bad. We're not bullish on Tank Bigsby. We're less bullish on Travis Etienne. We don't know what to think about Bashal Tutin. I would rather take a flyer this year on Bashal Tutin than I would Travis Etienne, because all of the efficiency metrics and regression from the last couple of years have indicated that he will continue to fall off. And now you've got a completely different and brand new coaching regime in Liam Cohen, who's not going to have any patience for anyone who's already been in that room that he didn't invest in. Like, if ETN is not going to show any explosiveness whatsoever or any sort of juice to get the ball to the second level with the opportunities that he gets in the first team offense, then he's just like, Liam Cohen just won't utilize him. So that's the floor you're really looking at with Travis Etienne, is about 0 points, because you could be looking at some weeks where they just don't give him the ball. And you're looking at a ceiling that I think is a lot less at this point, with Bigsby getting a majority of the carries. I do think the news out of camp is definitely valid and relevant there. They are trying everyone out there, and ETN is really not capitalizing on those opportunities in the run game.
So we're not telling you not to draft these guys. We're not telling you you're stupid for drafting them. What we're telling you is
we're not drafting them.
We're not drafting them because we looked at the data. Really, the main point of this video was, hey, the numbers are not good for these guys, so you need to watch out. Again, what you do with the information is completely up to you as a very competent and smart and strong and beautiful fantasy football player. Make sure you drop a like. Make sure you subscribe if you fall in one of those categories. And also, again, we've got our season pass best deal of the season. Hit down in the link in the comments, and you can get in a league with Nathan and I if you join with code DOMAIN. But you unlock literally everything, including the algorithm, which we talked about in this video. Appreciate you guys. See you on the next vid.